Peasant enfranchisement is one of the newest mechanics currently available in EU5 via the beta. But what does it do? To put it in the simplest terms, when a member of the peasantry, that being a labourer, soldier, peasant or slave, makes money, how much of that money goes to the commoner estate and how much goes to the noble estate depends on peasant enfranchisement. At 100% peasant enfranchisement, 100% of the income will go to the peasants, while at 10% peasant enfranchisement, 90% of their income will go to the nobility. Peasant enfranchisement is affected by various things. Every location by default will gain 25% peasant enfranchisement. Rural locations bring peasant enfranchisement down by 20%, towns increase it by 10%, and cities increase it by 25%. It is also affected by control. At 100% control, you gain an extra 50 peasant enfranchisement, whereas at 0 control, you of course gain 0 peasant enfranchisement. But why should you care about having high peasant enfranchisement or low peasant enfranchisement? Well, higher peasant enfranchisement will of course direct money to your commoner estates, and lower peasant enfranchisement will direct money to your noble estates. The benefit to this is rather obvious, as it is easier to tax your peasant estate than it is to tax your noble estate. So by increasing peasant enfranchisement, you increase the amount of money that goes to the peasants, which you can then tax due to the ease of which there is in taxing the peasant estate. But that doesn't tell the whole story. In some ways, there are benefits to decreasing peasant enfranchisement. The nobility are often rather wealthy due to low peasant enfranchisement, and as the nobles gain more wealth, they will then invest that wealth into your nation. The nobles tend to be very proactive and very aggressive when it comes to expanding RGOs when they have a positive income. In contrast, the peasantry, even with high peasant enfranchisement, at least at the start of the game, have a hard time getting enough income to build buildings. And if you are taxing them at a high rate, you'll be making that even worse by taking more money from them. So lowering peasant enfranchisement benefits you in the sense that it allows the nobles to reinvest in your country, whereas increasing peasant enfranchisement benefits you as it allows you to gain more income via taxing the peasantry, but does weaken the rate of noble investment as you are taking resources into your treasury that the nobles would be investing themselves. So how do you go about increasing peasant enfranchisement? The main way outside of control is through privileges. By my count, you can gain 50 peasant enfranchisement simply by handing out privileges to your commoner estates, and you can decrease peasant enfranchisement by 20% via handing out privileges to your nobility. The next major way is via the serfdom and free subjects societal values. At maxed serfdom, peasant enfranchisement will decrease by 33% in every location, whereas at high free subjects, you will increase peasant enfranchisement by 33% in every location. The final way to affect peasant enfranchisement is actually a building, the bailiff, which decreases peasant enfranchisement by 10%, but it also increases control by 20%, which has a roundabout way of essentially cancelling itself out. Unless, of course, you're talking about a location that already has maximum control, in which case the bailiff can be used simply to lower peasant enfranchisement by 10%. If we refer back to societal values for a moment, I'd like to compare serfdom and free subjects, because in the current version of the game, I honestly think serfdom is far better than free subjects. From a military standpoint, serfdom increases your peasant levies by 25% and increases your levy recovery rate by 50%. By contrast, free subjects decreases your peasant levies by 25%, but increases the combat efficiency of all levies by 10%, meaning early game, free subjects focused nations are a lot weaker than serfdom-focused nations who will have much larger armies. But of course, levies start to fall away, and so they're not worth considering after a point. So let's ignore the levy modifiers and simply look at the other modifiers. Free subjects will provide peasant estate satisfaction equilibrium, which is of course nice, peasant enfranchisement, and pop promotion speed. Pop promotion speed is always good, but it's less effective in the current beta due to the fact that control no longer impacts pop promotion speed. Even at 0 control in a location, pops will promote at the same speed as they'll do in your high control locations, making pop promotion speed not as valuable. To add on to that, peasant estate satisfaction equilibrium isn't as valuable either, as it is quite easy to make the peasants happy. On the flip side, serfdom, again if we ignore the levy-based modifiers, provides 10% raw material output, estate satisfaction plus 10, and peasant enfranchisement minus 33%. By contrast, the nobility are a lot harder to keep happy than the peasantry, so bonuses to their satisfaction equilibrium are often more valuable than the peasant modifiers. And raw material output is good from the start of the game to the end of the game, as it means your locations produce more resources. And more resources, of course, mean more money. There's also the fact that increasing peasant enfranchisement is a lot harder than decreasing it, as peasant enfranchisement is low in rural locations and is affected by control. Even with all of the modifiers available to increase peasant enfranchisement, as you can see, peasant enfranchisement is still quite low across the board, even with all of the modifiers handed out to the peasantry to increase it. But let's say you wanted to do a low peasant enfranchisement strategy. How would that work? If you push for low peasant enfranchisement, it's quite easy to achieve the minimum of 10%. This of course leads to explosive income growth for the nobility, who then invest that income very aggressively into your RGOs to expand their own wealth. But I know what you'll say, the main problem with this strategy is tax. The nobles have a lot of money and they're investing it aggressively, but we won't make much of that money in tax. But there are ways to increase your nobility's max tax. Castile, for example, is kind of encouraged to do this, as they start with 2 laws which increase the nobility's tax rate by 15% together. There is also the Favor the Nobility state law, which increases max tax for the nobility by 10%. Islamic nations can also achieve quite a high tax rate for the nobility, as they have access to the Zimmi or Dhimmi law, promote local hierarchies, which increase maximum tax for the nobility by 10%. And of course, as you research advancements, you'll gain new ways to tax the nobility. For example, the right of the nobility law, where you can curtail the nobility for an extra 10% tax rate. To sum it up, peasant enfranchisement is an interesting mechanic, which you can use to influence who exactly in your nation is receiving the money. And by investing in the nobility, you can ensure rapid development of your nation's RGOs, whereas diverting money to the peasantry can ensure a large sum of money is going straight into your treasury. It would really depend on what you want to do. If you're a large rural-based nation, achieving low peasant enfranchisement is very easy, whereas achieving high peasant enfranchisement is quite difficult due to the low spread of control. Whereas if you're playing as a smaller, high control nation, achieving high peasant enfranchisement is much easier. Between which is better, it's hard to say, specifically because this is still in beta and there's many things that don't provide sources of peasant enfranchisement. For example, even a peasant republic currently provides no peasant enfranchisement, likely because Paradox has forgot to, or hasn't got to, changing this. Which do you prefer? Giving power to your nobles and letting them build up your country essentially for free while you skim off the profits, or diverting as much of the money as possible to your peasant estate, taxing it and enriching your treasury that way, and then personally developing your nation? If you have any questions about peasant enfranchisement, or anything else for that matter, don't hesitate to ask. Hopefully Paradox doesn't completely change this mechanic before the final release of version 1.1. For now though, this is the end of the video. Thank you for watching, I hope it was helpful in some way to you, and I'll see you next time.